We're glad to welcome aboard, joining the conversation, Wisdom Kofi Dogbe. He's a financial analyst, and he joins us this morning as we have breakfast on the News Review. Wisdom, good morning.
Good morning, Ben. Good morning, sweetie. Thanks for having me again.
All right, so let's get right down to it. What would you like to discuss with us this morning before we cut into the papers?
Yeah, Ben, I read a bit about allegations that the Attorney General tried to get a defendant in the ambulance case to implicate the minority leader, Honorable Dr. Atuforson. I think it is a very serious accusation to the extent that if this is proven to be true, the Attorney General may have to resign because he would have lost the confidence of the nation to act as an AG. And I'm not a legal expert, but I am wondering if he could also have some legal exposure as a result of this alleged misconduct, attempting to implicate a political rival. These allegations are serious. We need to quickly answer the question of if this is a political persecution or this is actually a genuine prosecution. Then it costs a lot of money to try these cases in court. And it will be quite unfortunate if a case like this is being done only for political purposes. And I think that it is an abuse of the judicial system, if the system is turned into a weapon to smear and jail a political opponent. It undermines the principles of equality before the law, and it erodes public confidence in the judicial system. Look, in my mind, right, it is a clear case of abuse of power by the AG if indeed he tried to get the defendant to implicate Honorable Dr. Atuforson. In fact, I think that is a violation of the minority leader's human rights if it turns out that he's been put on trial because not because he committed any crime, right? Not because he broke any laws, but because he's a political opponent. I think it is saddening, to say the least. Ghana is better than this, and we can do better. Look, I'm not trying to be overly political here in this matter, but I've had the opportunity to sit down and also chat with Honorable Dr. Atuforson, and him and I will continue to exchange messages every now and then. So I can say confidently that the man is an honorable, fine man, and in all of my discussions with him, you could tell that he's focused on helping our nation, to achieve economic independence. He shared with me some of his plans to do what is right for the nation, and I have nothing but respect and admiration for the man. So I can vouch for his integrity and also dignity as a decent and also a fine statesman.
But let me just sneak this in, and it's not to dispute what you're saying, but someone can have all of that moral character and all of that and still err. And when you err in law, sometimes there are consequences. I'm not saying he is culpable or not, but I'm just trying to situate the conversation that just because someone has character, just because that person is a gentleman or works diligently, effectively, and efficiently, does not mean as well that the person may not commit an error here and there. Mind you, I'm not saying that the minority leader has. I mean, if you look at things and the LC, among others, you may raise certain questions. We'll leave the courts to do that. I'm just saying that let's not make a blanket statement as though once someone were of good character and had a certain track record, they could never err. That's all I want to chip in.
I bet you're right? And that's not what I'm saying at all. There is a reason why we have the court system. And we should allow the court system to be independent, and the rule of law would take its course, right? It's going through the legal proceedings, and the judicial system will determine that. But Ben, with that said, I think that the defendant who made these allegations against the AG should provide evidence quickly. I think that the truth needs to be established ASAP. And I have concerns if this is true, Ben. And my main concern in this case is that when a whole attorney general works maliciously to implicate a lawmaker, maybe only because that lawmaker is in opposition or because of maybe some personal vendetta, I think it raises serious questions, right, about the fairness and also the integrity of the attorney general and also the legal system that he runs. So I would expect that there will be an independent investigation into the allegations, right? An investigation that it will be carried out by a neutral and independent body, to ensure that there is impartiality and also objective assessment of the evidence to be produced. And because of this allegation against the AG, when it comes to the judiciary, I think that the judge in charge will go that extra mile, to carefully review all the evidences that will be presented in the case and make a ruling that is based only on the merits of the case and totally free of any political influence or pressure.
Right.
I say this because if the allegations against the AG are true, then there is no guarantee that he wouldn't attempt to also influence the judiciary in hopes of getting the outcomes that he wants, even if it means bending the law. And so I think that the onus is also on the judge, to show that the judiciary maintains its independence and neutrality throughout the entire proceedings.
Well, thank you, Wisdom. Let's get into the papers now. Would you like to start, sweetie?
Yep, let's start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. On the front page, halting CD decline. Bank of Ghana rolls out tough measures. Bawumia Mahama spar over economy at CEO summit. Ghana loses $1.9 billion to post-harvest losses annually. Minority urges president to construct Paulugu Dam project. And Reverend Father Campbell, 23 others for maiden ELC awards. Work on Minerals Commission office in Kumasi progresses. Let's start from page 3 of the Daily Graphic. The Bank of Ghana rolls out tough measures, and the story reads, the Bank of Ghana has stepped in to directly absorb the foreign exchange needs of corporate institutions as part of a series of measures to contain the depreciation cedi. This is to reduce the pipeline demands for foreign exchange from the commercial banks and effectively halt the depreciating local currency. The Ghana cedi has so far depreciated by 14.6% against the US dollar and is trading at 13.94% and selling at 13.96% against the dollar at the intermarket. At some forex bureaus in Accra, the dollar was being bought at 14.80 pesos and sold at 15 cedis as of yesterday. But the central bank says they're working with the Ghana Association of Banks to streamline documentation requirements for foreign payments to minimize the incentives to resort to the informal markets. I want to go through the entire paper before we come for reactions. South Africa votes tomorrow. Tomorrow, May 29th, South Africa will vote in national provincial elections to elect a new National Assembly and state legislatures. The National Assembly will choose the president for the next 5 years. It will be the country's 7th democratic general election since the apartheid ended in 1994 when Nelson Mandela was elected president and the ANC winning 62.5%. But after 30 years of dominance, the ANC faces its toughest election yet, needing 50% of the National Assembly to maintain its parliamentary majority. I don't know what you think about that. But in politics, or still on some business issues, Ghana loses $1.9 billion to post-harvest losses annually. Now, Ghana loses about $1.9 billion of its crop production to post-harvest losses annually. The head of food system at the World Food Program, Stephen Odatefiu, has disclosed, quote, we've been able to estimate that we're losing $1.9 billion in post-harvest losses every single year. That is according to Mr. Matefiu, which he said at a day's stakeholder engagement and sensitization workshop of the Avenue pilot project in Sunyani last Friday. The huge losses were attributed to factors such as lack of processing and storage facilities as well as poor road network. Now, minority urges president to construct the Paulugu Dam project. Those are just some headlines. And there's a story I want to get into in politics, and that's on page 18 of the Daily Graphic. Bawumia Mahama spar over economy at CEO summit. The two major presidential hopefuls, former President John Dramani Mahama of the NDC and Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia of the NPP, starred in a shadow boxing on the platform of the Ghana CEO Summit and Excellence Awards in Accra yesterday, sharing varied and alternative visions to steer the economy towards recovery and growth. I think that ended with them, with Mahama actually challenging Dr. Bawumia to a debate on the economy. I'll put a pin in that. Now, my presidency will advance African unity. That is according to Mona, the presidential candidate hopeful for People's National Convention. Now, in sports, there was a story I wanted to do in sports. Here it is. Black Stars begin camp Thursday. The Black Stars of Ghana will open their training camp in Accra on Thursday, May 30th, 2024, in preparation for the crucial 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Mali and Central African Republic. The team will train at the University of Ghana Stadium for 6 days before departing from Bamako on Tuesday, June 4th. Now, Ghana is aiming to regain its winning position from after a mixed start in Group 1 of the World Cup qualifiers. The Black Stars began their campaign with a 1-0 victory over Madagascar in Kumasi. Those are just some stories and quick. Let me add this. Pilgrims without authorized visas to be arrested. We know that come Friday, some 200 people will be lifted from Tamale to Saudi Arabia for Hajj. And they're saying that if you do not have a visa, you will be dealt with. So proper procedures are in place. But Dr. Dogbe, your reactions on these stories?
So, Sweetie, I think it's a good thing that the Bank of Ghana is now taking tough measures, right, to mitigate the decline of the cedi. To be honest, the continuous depreciation of the cedi, I think, is a worrying development because if you think about it, it has wiped off the wealth of many households and also businesses significantly, and it continues to decline, right? So I think that something has to give to address the situation. And if it takes these tough measures, so be it, right? But I hope that these measures of the Bank of Ghana stepping in to, absorb the foreign exchange needs of large corporations,
right,
and also keeping a tighter check on forex bureaus, I hope this will not be the only key measure, Sweetie. I think to address the decline of the cedi, I think it will take a multi-faceted approach. The exchange rate being one of them, right, is just one of the equation. That is why I tend to agree with the suggestion from the Institute of Economic Affairs. And I shared some of these suggestions on your show a while back on what I think the Bank of Ghana can do to build strong buffers. I think it all boils down to strengthening our macroeconomic situation, right? I mean, ensuring that we have sound monetary and also fiscal policies in place with the goal of controlling economic indicators such as ensuring that the exchange rate environment is stable, which is what this new measure is for. And we need to continue working on controlling inflation, Sweetie,
right,
and pursuing policies that stimulate sustainable economic progress. Inflation is still too high. Look, in the U.S., right, I think inflation is around 3.3%. And trust me, Joe Biden might as well lose this election because some of the people here think that this rate of inflation is too high. And they believe it is adversely impacting the economic bottom lines.
That's 3-point-something%, huh?
Yeah, go ahead. Say that again.
No, I'm just reiterating that even at 3-point-something%, and we are here.
Yeah. And I know you'll be comparing apples to oranges, right? If you compare Ghana and the U.S. But the point here is that regardless of which side of the aisle you sit, you would agree that our current level of inflation is not helping, when it comes to stabilizing the cedi. And yes, we're in a very high debt crisis, right? But what can we do to possibly start to accumulate good reserve, right? Good foreign exchange, to help fight against the devaluation of the cedi.
Right.
We got a bunch of dollars from the IMF and others. But I don't know if we managed that well. So evidently, it hasn't helped the cedi at all when it comes to stabilization. And I also think that we need to pursue policies that will promote foreign direct investment and remittances.
Yeah.
We need a good foreign exchange reserve as a better buffer so that we can play, right, from a position of strength in the foreign exchange market and stabilize the cedi.
Right. Any other stories, or should we get into the other paper now?
When it comes to, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You know, I heard that Dr. Bawumia and also the former President Mahama were both speakers at the 8th Ghana CEO Awards today, right? And it seems that they leveraged the occasion to get their messaging out to the voters. Sweetie, the part that interests me more is where Dr. Bawumia touted projects that were undertaken by the NPP government. And I think that indeed, this government has done projects, right? They've done projects of various kinds. I just don't know if they've done more impactful projects than the previous administration. I don't know that for a fact. What actually caught my attention from his speech at the CEO summit is that he said that because they have done these projects, it demonstrates government's commitment to transparency and also accountability when it comes to development efforts. I don't know if I agree with that sentiment entirely. In fact, I would rather say, I would say it quite differently that, you know, there's been many instances of corruption and lack of accountability and transparency, you know, in the way some of these projects are managed. Look at the case of the National Cathedral, where so much money has been spent, but so little can be seen over there. How about the Agenda 111 projects, where a bunch of these projects are behind schedule? Then we have this Pualugu Dam project, where 12 million United States dollars, right, has been spent with nothing significant to show for it. Look, I can keep giving you several examples, but I'd rather stay on my analysis and make my point that it is great that these projects are being done, but how has that translated into lessening the economic burden on Ghanaians?
Right. Okay,
I think that the debates will make one good sport, and it would set the pace for, you know, the election year. That although there are so many issues already, a debate will be a good start, don't you think? But let's get into the custodian newspaper.
But quickly, let me add quickly though, Sweetie, if you don't mind. I think that Dr. Bawumia deserves some credit for championing digitization across the country. Ghana should not be left behind in the pursuit of technological advancement. That he's done, and we'll give it to him.
Point noted. So on the front page, past allegations trouble Educhum. $2.32 billion to flow into the economy. We've already talked about that. Bawumia fires up NPP USA to break the 8. Finance Ministry holds engagements with stakeholders. Most of these stories we've already gotten into. I'll do some quick headlines and then Benjamin. CSA forms committee to establish industry forum. That is the Cybersecurity Authority. Government okays $2.3 billion Ghana cedis to recapitalize NIB. Government to build capacities of SMEs. There are many other stories in the custodian newspaper, so you can grab one for yourself and get into the stories. Benjamin.
Well, I'd like to salute Prof. I don't know whether to mention your full name, but you just got back into town and you've sent me a message. Welcome back to town, Prof. I'll start with the Daily Guide newspaper. And this morning I am tempted almost not to read certain headlines because it's becoming tiresome, isn't it? Sometimes the slant on certain stories and how, you know, the reactions are. But I'll go ahead and do them all the same. This one says, ambulance case, Atoforsen begs AG to drop case. That story is on page 6 of the Daily Guide newspaper. Bawumia dares Mahama to debate. I saw an interesting story on this yesterday. It gave me a good laugh, actually. Ebenage Herbal trains staff. And then boy 3 killed in Lil Wayne accident. All of these stories in the Daily Guide newspaper. I'll go on the international front there as well. But the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has challenged his main contender in this year's elections, ex-President John Dramani Mahama, to a debate on the economy. I don't know what else to be debated on the economy, but he said that the current government had undertaken tangible and verifiable development projects, as opposed to those of the NDC government led by Mr. Mahama. The vice president, who argued with the NDC flag bearer at the 8th Ghana CEO Summit in Accra, stated that the MPP government's initiatives were not guinea fowl projects under Mr. Mahama's tenure. This came after Mr. Mahama blasted the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government, claiming that Ghana had become a bankrupt, collapsed country as a result of poor leadership in the past 8 years. And he said We are all aware of our country's current challenges and difficulties. Today, we stand at a critical and troubling crossroads as our beloved Ghana has become a bankrupt, collapsed economy due to poor leadership over the past 8 years, pushing some 8,000 of our citizens into the poverty line. I don't think, Daily Guide, it's not 8,000. If I'm not mistaken, the figure is about 800,000 plus. I don't know whether this was an error, but it's not 8,000, definitely not 8,000. Then there is this other story I want to take a quick look at before I take a look at the Lil Wayne bit as well. Let me just do the Lil Wayne bit. So it says, a 3-year-old boy lost his life after the accident in Kumasi, a road accident in Kumasi, which involved the Mercedes-Benz of actor Kwejon Kansa, also known as Lil Wayne, and 2 other cars on Saturday. Now, fresh reports emerging indicate that the boy, identified as Richard Teria Ampoma, and his father, his name has been withheld, sustained life-threatening injuries when the cars collided. The boy and his father, who were in a Hyundai Santa Fe, were reportedly rushed to a nearby hospital at Anwiem for immediate treatment. Unfortunately, that 3-year-old is no longer with us. We'll leave the authorities to get into the salient details of that. But I just wanted to take a quick swipe at some other stories. Prioritize online safety of children, EOCO boss says so. Now, the executive director of the Economic and Organized Crime Office, Commissioner of Police, Mami Atiwa Adudankwa, has urged parents to prioritize online safety of their children by implementing effective monitoring measures. Now, such a move, she believed, would help reduce the number of missing children recorded in the country. She made these remarks at this year's International Missing Children's Day, hosted by Missing Children Ghana, a non-governmental organization. What I would add to this story as my view, I think children are being given IT gadgets far too early in some jurisdictions. Interestingly, some of these people in the middle of tech, they are giving their children gadgets after they are 12 and 13. Here, we are willing. I see it at Sunday school and other places. We give them gadgets right from the start. And scientifically, it's been proven that when you start doing that to them, it affects parts of their brain development in certain ways. But I don't know. I guess we're always very keen on copying and copying blindly. So 3 stories, first of all, for your reflection. Bawumia daring Mahama to a debate, that 3-year-old boy who's been killed in that latest accident, and then the bit about EOCO on the online safety of children. The thoughts have to be very quick, Wisdom. I'll bring 2 international stories your way, and then we'll say goodbye to the Daily Guide newspaper. Quick thoughts?
I would say that first thoughts is thoughts and prayers to the family of that 3-year-old boy, old child. I don't know if it's a boy or girl.
It's a boy.
Very saddening. Yeah, it's a boy, right? That's a very saddening story, and we should be praying for them, for that family. But Ben, when it comes to that 800,000 Ghanaians pushed below the poverty line, I think it is no doubt that the economic policies that were pursued, in the last few years, I think that these policies have worsened the economic plight of Ghanaians and has pushed many of our citizens below the poverty line. A couple of years ago, right, a good number of Ghanaians were able to afford, building materials like cement, a trip of sand, and also iron rods, right? These things are now afforded only by a small percentage of the population. Even everyday items like food and healthcare, a lot of Ghanaians are struggling to afford these things. So unfortunately, the former president has a point in saying that many Ghanaians are now under the poverty line. But it shouldn't be so. We need to implement effective policies to move Ghanaians above the poverty line. And in my opinion, this will require a combination of targeted policy intervention and also systemic changes. And we need to start with job creation, right, and also economic growth. I think that, Ben, we should be pursuing policies that promote economic growth and policies that create jobs. This is very critical in lifting the citizens out of poverty.
Right. Thank you for those. Yesterday, I had an interaction with the majority leader of Ghana's parliament, Alexander Afenyo-Markin. And, some reflection there on page 4 of the Daily Guide newspaper. NDC as alternative is scary. That's according to Afenyo-Markin. And that's what the Daily Guide captured, talking about his speaking on Joy News, the AM show. Anyway, so that is it. On the international front, more than 2,000 people buried alive in landslide. This gave me chills because of the situation in Ghana and many places that are literally, some of them on fault lines when it comes to earthquakes, others in areas where if there were a landslide, mudslide, it could be catastrophic. We don't have the means. We claim to manage disasters and there's nothing, but that's the situation, as more than 2,000 people have been buried by a massive landslide in northern Papua New Guinea, the country's disaster agency has said. And then there's also there's a story I wanted to get into very quickly. Okay, so I think it may have been the other one I did. I'll pause here on the Daily Guide newspaper. If you don't have any thoughts, I would move on. Wisdom?
I haven't been on top of that news from Papua New Guinea, so let me come back to you with my reactions later on that one. All
right, and our condolences to them, of course, on the back of those deaths.
Absolutely.
The new finder, fireworks at CEO summit as Bawumia, Mahama tackle each other. Moses Baden, CEO of Margins, adjudged overall best CEO. Ghana eyes $2 billion out of $34.1 billion global salt market. And I guess it's only fitting as well that we celebrate our very own Kenansa, adjudged CEO of the Year Media for radio. So congratulations to our CEO. He's done this many a time and he's winning it one more time. It says a lot about your credibility. So Mr. Ansa, congratulations and good morning to you. Now, the Economy Times. Government records 2.6% deficit for first quarter 2024. Ghana loses $54 billion annually to environmental degradation. That's according to the EPA. And government expects $2.3 billion to support the cedi. I'm sorry, but government in, government out. And getting something from somewhere before we can balance something. You know, if the world were to go into a major crisis, financial crisis, think of 2008 and the rest, and countries were very unwilling to help other countries. And even the Bretton Woods institutions were themselves, yes, we are members and all of that, we contribute and all of that. But if those scales were to shift or tilt, I wonder where we would be. Anyway, so provisional data on the execution of the 2024 budget shows that for the first quarter of this year, the government has recorded an overall broad cash deficit of 2.6% of GDP, according to figures from the Bank of Ghana. Then, like I said, Ghana losing $54 billion to environmental degradation every year. And then the expected support, hopefully that will shore up the cedi. Just this dawn, I was reading something about Zimbabwe and how bad it got at a point, about 5 billion% on their currency, where you needed about 500 million just to get a loaf of bread. Hopefully we never get there. Quick thoughts in about a minute and a half and we're good to go. Wisdom.
Ben, you see, when it comes to the fiscal deficit that you just talked about, and I wasn't on top of that news either, but this is what I can say, right? When we begin to borrow, I can almost guarantee you that we will borrow to cover that deficit. And when it comes to that borrowing, it makes our debt level continues to rise, right? Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to the growth of the national debt, I would say that it's a frightening statistics. And let's face it, right? The depreciation of the cedi is killing us financially when it comes to servicing our debt. We need to stabilize the ship, right? When it comes to the exchange rate volatility. Look, the cedi depreciation by itself is cost about 30 billion cedis, right, in additional debt when it comes to the portion of the external debt. So there is the urgency to address the decline of the cedi. But we also should get to the point where we say that enough is enough and work on our fiscal discipline, right? We need to implement, sound fiscal policies to, reduce the public debt. The thing is that increased borrowing by the government, right, from the domestic market, mainly to supplement this kind of short-term funding needs, such as salaries and also financing other government expenditures. this domestic borrowing also went up by about 20 billion cedis. So if we continue this way, we are mortgaging our future, and the kids, our children, will have to pay this.
Thank you, Wisdom, for those succinct thoughts on those bits. We're grateful for your time this morning. Sweetie, any quick thoughts?
I like how he put it. We are mortgaging our future.
Well.
Posterity will judge us all.
Posterity definitely will judge. A very...